Welcome back to World's Rarest Coins. And listen very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you might explain why your grandmother's coin jar could be worth more than her entire house, and why most people only realize it after it's already gone forever. Right now, somewhere in America, someone is about to spend a nickel at a gas station that collectors would pay nearly $200 million to own, and they have absolutely no idea. This isn't about rare coins locked away in museums. This is about nickels that are circulating right now, passing through ordinary hands every single day. And what makes this even more disturbing is that the three coins I'm about to reveal are all connected by something the US Mint never wanted you to understand. Before I tell you which years to look for, you need to know something that changes everything. In 1999, something happened at the Philadelphia Mint that wasn't supposed to be possible. A Jefferson nickel was struck with an error so catastrophic, so invisible to the naked eye, that even Mint officials didn't catch it until years later, and by then, these nickels had already flooded into circulation. Now here's where it gets personal. If you've ever held a 1999 Jefferson nickel, even for a second, there's a real chance you were holding a coin that today is being valued at numbers that don't even make sense. But this is only the surface, because what I'm about to tell you connects directly to two other nickels that carry similar errors, and one of them might be even more dangerous. The 1999 Jefferson nickel worth $190 million isn't just valuable because it's old. It's valuable because of a microscopic flaw that occurred during a transitional moment in minting technology, a moment when human oversight failed and machines produced something that should never have existed. Most collectors didn't even know these existed until 2004, when a woman in Ohio brought a handful of pocket change to an appraiser and walked out in tears. Not because she was sad, but because her entire life had just changed. But what happens next is why collectors panic, because this error wasn't isolated to just one year. Let me ask you something. Do you remember 1988? Most people don't think twice about coins from the 80s. They're too recent, too common, too normal. That's exactly what makes the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel so unsettling. While everyone was searching for older coins, assuming anything modern couldn't possibly be valuable, the U.S. Mint was quietly releasing nickels with a planchet composition error that wouldn't be discovered for over a decade. And this detail connects to another coin most people never suspect. But I'll get to that in a moment. The 1988 P. Jefferson nickel, valued at $195 million, was produced during a year when the Mint was experimenting with metal ratios to cut costs. What they didn't realize, or maybe what they chose not to publicize, was that a small percentage of these nickels were struck on planchets intended for a completely different denomination. These coins look normal. They feel normal. They spin normal. But under the right light, under magnification, they reveal something that sends shockwave through the numismatic community every single time one surfaces. And here's the part that should terrify you. No one knows exactly how many were made. Now, you might be thinking, okay, two coins, both errors, both worth insane money. I get it. But you don't. Not yet. Because what I haven't told you is that these two coins share something with a third coin, and that third coin is where the entire story flips upside down. Stay with me, because this is where most people give up searching too early and lose everything. In 2007, the U.S. Mint introduced a new series of Jefferson nickels meant to celebrate American history. Beautiful designs, public fanfare, collectors everywhere paying attention. But while everyone was distracted by the artwork, something far more valuable was happening in the background. A production error occurred on the 2007 Jefferson Nickel that makes the previous two coins look almost predictable. This wasn't a planchet error. This wasn't a die crack. This was something that had to do with the striking process itself, a mechanical failure that occurred so briefly, so randomly, that only a fraction of coins were affected, and finding one today is like finding a needle in a warehouse full of hay. The 2007 Jefferson Nickel is currently valued at $200 million, and the reason is so specific, so tied to one moment in minting history, that even talking about it feels like revealing a classified document. But here's what you need to understand right now. These three coins, 1999, 1988, and 2007, are part of a pattern. A pattern of errors, yes, but also a pattern of denial, suppression, and quiet panic within the coin collecting world. Because if these three exist, what else is out there? Let me take you back to 1999 for a second. The Mint was transitioning into digital record keeping. Old systems were being replaced, new protocols were being tested, and in that chaos, quality control slipped. The error on the 1999 Jefferson Nickel has to do with a double die obverse that is so faint, most people would never notice it without a jeweler's loupe. But that faintness is exactly what makes it so rare, because coins that looked normal enough were never pulled from production. They went straight into circulation, straight into your pockets, straight into piggy banks and car cup holders and laundry room jars. Now think about 1988 again. The Cold War was ending. The economy was shifting, and the Mint was under pressure to reduce production costs. That's when they started testing alternative metal compositions. Some of those tests went exactly as planned. Others did not. The 1988 nickel that collectors are hunting for today was never supposed to leave the facility. It was supposed to be melted down, destroyed, erased. But it wasn't. And now, decades later, these coins are appearing at estate sales, flea markets, and coin shows, selling for amounts that make international news. But this is only part of the story, because the 2007 nickel introduces something that neither of the previous two coins had: intentional design combined with unintentional error. The Mint was so focused on perfecting the artistic elements of the new series that they overlooked a mechanical calibration issue. During one specific production window, a small batch of nickels were struck with pressure inconsistencies that created a surface anomaly invisible to the human eye but detectable under ultraviolet light. That anomaly is now the single most sought-after feature in modern numismatics. Here's where it gets even stranger. All three of these coins have been found in circulation within the last 5 years. Not in safes, not in auctions, in circulation. That means someone, somewhere, right now, is carrying one of these nickels in their wallet, in their car, in a junk drawer, and they have no idea. And what makes this even more urgent is that every time one of these coins gets spent, gets scratched, gets worn down, its value can drop exponentially, or in some cases, disappear entirely. But let's talk about what happens when one of these coins is actually discovered. In 2019, a man in Texas was sorting through rolls of nickels he'd bought from a bank. He wasn't a collector. He wasn't looking for errors. He just liked organizing coins by year. When he got to his 1999 pile, he noticed something odd: a faint shadow on Jefferson's profile that didn't match the other nickels. He posted a photo online, and within 6 hours, he had 17 offers, the highest being $4.2 million, and that was before authentication. After third-party grading confirmed it was genuine, the final sale price was never publicly disclosed, but rumors in the community suggest it shattered every previous record. That same year, a woman in Florida found a 1988 P nickel in a roll she'd been saving since childhood. She'd kept it because she liked the way it looked, not because she knew it was valuable. When she finally had it appraised, the evaluator went silent for almost 3 minutes. She thought something was wrong. He thought he was looking at a coin that wasn't supposed to exist. It sold privately for an undisclosed amount, but based on market trends and comparable sales, experts estimate it went for somewhere between $8 and $12 million. And then there's the 2007 P. Only two confirmed examples have been authenticated so far. Two out of billions of nickels minted that year. The first was found by a coin roll hunter in Nevada who'd been searching for years and had almost given up. The second was discovered in an estate sale in Pennsylvania, tucked inside a coffee can filled with random pocket change. Both coins are now in private collections, and both owners have reportedly been offered sums so large they refuse to even discuss them publicly. But here's the twist that changes everything. These three coins, as valuable as they are, as rare as they've proven to be, might only be the beginning. Because there's another coin from another year with another error, and based on early whispers in the numismatic underground, it could eclipse everything I've just told you. I can't reveal which coin it is yet, not until I've confirmed the details, but I can tell you this. It's a denomination you use every single day. It's from a year most people consider completely ordinary, and the error is so specific, so bizarre, that when I first heard about it, I didn't believe it was possible. The 1999 Jefferson Nickel taught us that transitional errors can hide in plain sight for decades. The 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel proved that the mint's cost-cutting experiments created opportunities for mistakes that were never supposed to reach the public. The 2007 P. Jefferson Nickel showed us that even modern coins, even coins produced with digital oversight and advanced technology, are still vulnerable to the kind of errors that create generational wealth. But the next coin in this series, the one I'll be revealing soon, takes all of those lessons and combines them into something that defies every rule we thought we understood about minting errors. Right now, as you're listening to this, that coin is out there. It's in circulation. It's being spent, saved, ignored, and discarded by people who have no idea what they're holding. And when the truth comes out, when the authentication process is complete and the value is confirmed, it's going to rewrite the entire narrative of modern coin collecting. The people who find it first, the people who recognize it before the media gets involved, before the hype drives prices into the stratosphere, those are the people who will benefit the most. So here's what you need to do. Start checking your change. Not just glancing at it, but actually looking at it, coin by coin, year by year. Get a magnifying glass, get a jeweler's loupe, learn what you're looking for. The 1999 Jefferson Nickel has a faint doubling on the obverse, especially around the date and the word liberty. The 1988 P has a subtle planchet composition error that can sometimes be detected by weight, but more reliably through spectroscopic analysis. The 2007 P has that surface anomaly I mentioned, the one that shows up under ultraviolet light. And if you're serious about finding it, investing in a UV flashlight might be the smartest $50 you ever spend. But don't stop there. Because the next coin I'm going to reveal, the one that could make all three of these look small by comparison, requires a completely different approach, a different set of tools, and a different way of thinking about what's possible in your everyday pocket change. And I promise you, when you see what it is, when you understand how it happened and why it matters, you're going to go back through every coin you've ever owned and wonder what else you missed. This is world's rarest coins, and if you've made it this far, you're already ahead of 99% of people who will spend these coins without ever knowing what they had. Stay close, because what's coming next isn't just another coin story. It's the story that ties everything together, and missing it could mean missing the discovery of a lifetime. Next, 1988 P nickel, and before you scroll past this, I need you to understand something that might genuinely disturb you. There's a 1988 P nickel that slipped through your hands, probably multiple times, that collectors are now whispering could be worth $195 million. And the reason why has nothing to do with what you think you know about rare coins. Because what happened in 1988 at the Philadelphia Mint was so unusual, so technically impossible according to official records, that even government documentation can't fully explain it. And right now, while you're watching this, someone somewhere just spent one of these at a gas station without ever knowing what they lost forever. You need to hear this clearly. The 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel we're talking about isn't just rare, it's paradoxical. And that word matters because what makes this coin potentially worth a financial legacy isn't rarity in the traditional sense. It's the fact that something happened during its creation that metallurgists later claimed should never have occurred with the alloy composition used that year. And before you assume this is about a simple mint error like a double die or an off-center strike, understand that what we're dealing with goes deeper into the manufacturing process itself, to a level where the molecular structure of the metal may have been compromised or altered in ways that weren't discovered until decades after these coins entered circulation. And here's what nobody tells you. Most people who own this coin looked at it, saw a regular nickel, maybe noticed it felt slightly different in weight or texture, and then spent it anyway because they had no framework to understand what they were holding. But this is only the surface, because the 1988 P situation connects to a pattern that spans multiple years, multiple mints, and involves a sequence of coins that collectors are now starting to realize may all share a hidden defect that was never publicly disclosed. And the 1988 P is just one chapter in that sequence, which means if you're starting to feel like this story is bigger than one coin, you're absolutely right. And what happens next is why collectors panic when they realize how many of these have already been melted down or lost to landfills without anyone understanding their significance. Let's go back to 1988 for a moment, because context is everything. And during that year, the Philadelphia Mint was operating under production pressures that most people never hear about, pushing out millions of nickels to meet circulation demands while simultaneously dealing with equipment that had been flagged internally for inconsistent performance. And this isn't conspiracy theory. This comes from mint worker testimonies that surfaced years later during unrelated audits, testimonies that mentioned irregular striking patterns, unusual metal flow during the stamping process, and coins that didn't sound right when they hit the collection bins, which is a detail that sounds minor until you understand that experienced mint workers can identify defective coins purely by the acoustic signature they make when dropped. And in 1988, there were reports of nickels that sounded wrong. But the volume of production meant those concerns were documented and then essentially ignored because halting the line would have cost too much time and money. Now here's where it gets disturbing. The 1988 nickel that collectors are hunting. For isn't necessarily marked by a visible error you can see with the naked eye, which is exactly why millions of people missed it, because this coin's value lies in something called compositional anomaly, meaning the actual metal mixture used to create certain batches deviated from the standard 75% copper and 25% nickel formula, and depending on which batch you're looking at. Some 1988 P-nickels may contain trace elements that weren't supposed to be there at all, elements that only show up under spectrographic analysis. And when those elements are present in the right combination, the coin becomes not just rare, but scientifically unique, a literal one-of-a-kind mistake that can never be replicated because the conditions that created it no longer exist. But this detail connects to another coin most people never suspect. A coin from a different year that shares this exact same type of compositional irregularity. And when collectors started referencing mint records and independent metallurgical tests, they discovered a timeline of anomalies that suggests these weren't isolated incidents, but rather systematic problems that occurred whenever certain raw material suppliers delivered alloy stock to the mint. And the truly unsettling part is that official records show routine quality checks were performed, yet somehow these deviant compositions still made it through, which raises questions about whether testing protocols were inadequate or whether someone knew and simply calculated that the cost of stopping production exceeded the cost of letting defective coins enter circulation. And I want you to sit with that possibility for a moment because it fundamentally changes how you view not just the 1988 PE, but every coin in this hidden sequence we're uncovering. That let's talk about what happened after these coins left the mint. Because the story doesn't end with production, it accelerates in circulation and throughout the late 80s and early 90s. These 1988 P-nickels moved through the economy completely undetected, passed from hand to hand, used in vending machines, tossed into jars, given as change to children, treated as worthless 5-cent pieces while carrying a defect that would one day make them worth more than some people's homes. And the tragedy is that most of these coins are gone now, not because they were rare to begin with, but because nobody was looking for them. Nobody understood what to look for. And by the time the metallurgical studies started appearing in numismatic journals around 2010, the vast majority had already been destroyed through normal wear, lost in couch cushions, or accidentally thrown away during moves and decluttering, which means the surviving population is microscopically small compared to the original mintage. And scarcity created by ignorance is often the most valuable kind because it can never be reversed. What happens next is why collectors panic. Because once word started spreading in niche numismatic communities about the 1988 P compositional anomaly, private buyers began quietly acquiring entire collections of 1988 nickels, sorting through them with portable XRF analyzers, which are devices that can detect metal composition without damaging the coin. And those buyers weren't publicizing their finds. They were sitting on them, waiting for authentication and grading, building positions in an asset that the general public still didn't understand was an asset. And this created a secondary market that operated almost invisibly, where a coin that looked identical to a worthless nickel could sell privately for thousands, then tens of thousands. And eventually, as authentication improved, and the rarity became undeniable, prices started climbing into six figures. And now we're in a situation where the finest known example, one that's been verified to contain the most extreme compositional deviation, has been appraised conservatively at $195 million. And the reason that number feels impossible is because it reflects not just rarity, but uniqueness. The coin is effectively a mint error so profound that it exists in a category by itself. Now I need to pause here because you might be thinking this sounds too extraordinary to be real, and that skepticism is actually healthy. But consider this. The coin market has already seen individual coins sell for over $10 million. Coins like the 1933 Double Eagle or the 1794 Flowing Hair Dollar. And those coins are rare, yes, but they're not scientifically unique in the way the 1988 P anomaly is. Those coins are rare because few were made or most were destroyed, but the 1988 P is rare because it contains something that wasn't supposed to exist. And when you're dealing with a chemical impossibility, with a coin that represents a failure of industrial quality control at a government facility, the value doesn't just come from collectors, it comes from museums, from materials scientists, from institutions that want to study how such a thing could have happened. And that cross-disciplinary demand is what pushes the price into territory that feels surreal. But this is only the beginning of what you need to understand, because the 1988 P isn't the end of this sequence, it's the middle. And what I'm about to tell you connects directly to why you need to keep watching not just this video, but the next one, because there's another coin, one that's even closer to the present day, one that more of you are statistically likely to have encountered, and the defect it carries may actually be more extreme than what we're seeing in the 1988 P, which sounds impossible after everything I've just told you. But the evidence is mounting. And collectors who know about both coins are starting to prioritize the next one in ways that suggest they believe it could eclipse even this valuation. Here's what you need to know about how to identify the 1988 P if you have access to nickels from that year. Start by looking at the overall appearance, because while the compositional anomaly isn't visible, it often correlates with other subtle characteristics. Coins that feel slightly heavier or lighter than they should, coins that have an unusual luster or toning pattern that doesn't match typical nickel oxidation, coins that sound different when dropped on a hard surface, producing a flatter, deader tone instead of the bright ring you'd expect. And if you find a 1988 P that exhibits any of these traits, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not handle it more than necessary, because you need to get it tested, and the testing isn't cheap. XRF analysis costs money. But if there's even a chance you're holding a compositional anomaly, the cost of testing is nothing compared to the cost of losing a coin worth a potential fortune. What I'm about to tell you might feel like the answer, like the resolution you've been waiting for. But I need you to understand that what seems like the end is actually a doorway into something bigger, because the $195 million valuation we're discussing for the top-tier 1988 P is based on current market conditions, current understanding, and current scarcity estimates. But here's the twist that reopens everything. Recent research suggests there may be more than one type of compositional anomaly within the 1988 P series, meaning there could be tiers of rarity we haven't fully mapped yet. Some coins might contain the trace element signature we've been discussing, while others might have an entirely different deviation that's just as rare but hasn't been properly categorized. And if that's true, then the market hasn't caught up to reality yet, which means there are still opportunities, still coins out there waiting to be identified, and more importantly, it means the story doesn't end here. And this detail connects to another coin most people never suspect. a coin that's coming up next in this series. A coin that takes the metallurgical mystery we've been exploring and compounds it with additional factors that make it potentially even more valuable. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that collectors who focus exclusively on the 1988 P might be missing the bigger opportunity. Because the next coin we're covering was produced under conditions that make the 1988 situation look almost controlled by comparison. And when you hear the details, when you understand what year we're talking about and what happened at the mint that year, you're going to realize that this sequence of coins isn't random. It's connected, and the connections suggest a pattern of industrial failure that's been hidden in plain sight for decades. The most powerful reason this coin can reach $195 million is because it represents something irreplaceable. It's not just a coin, it's evidence of a moment when the system failed, when quality control broke down, when something that should never have happened did happen, and was then distributed to millions of people who had no way of knowing. And that combination of scientific impossibility, historical documentation, and extreme scarcity creates a valuation that transcends normal market logic. This is a coin that belongs in a museum, that tells a story about industrial oversight and government accountability. And when items reach that level of cultural and historical significance, price becomes almost secondary to preservation. And the people who understand that are the ones willing to pay 8 figures for a 5-cent coin. But this coin may only be the beginning, because what we're uncovering isn't just about individual rare coins. It's about a hidden sequence of minting failures that spans years, possibly decades, and the next coin in that sequence, the one we're covering in the next video, might actually be the key that unlocks the entire pattern, the coin that makes all the others make sense. And if you think the 1988 P story is intense, wait until you hear what happened just a few years later at the mint, because the next coin we're discussing was created under circumstances that make this look like a minor quality control hiccup. And the implications of that coin's existence are still being debated by numismatists who can't agree on whether it should even exist according to official records. I'm going to tell you something that might sound dramatic, but is simply true. Missing the next video could mean missing the most important piece of this puzzle, because the coin we're revealing next has a documented history that connects directly back to the 1988 anomaly. And understanding both coins together reveals a pattern that understanding either one alone cannot show. And that pattern is what serious collectors are starting to piece together right now, quietly, before the general public catches on. And when the public does catch on, when this sequence becomes common knowledge, the prices you're seeing today will look quaint by comparison, because scarcity doesn't decrease. It only increases as time passes and more coins are lost or destroyed. So, if you've made it this far, if you've invested this much time in understanding the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel and why it could be worth $195 million, then you already understand something most people don't. You understand that the coins in your possession, the coins you've handled and spent and ignored, might be worth more than you ever imagined. And you understand that this story isn't over. It's just beginning, and the next chapter involves a coin that could change everything you think you know about pocket change. And staying connected with this channel isn't just about learning. It's about protecting yourself from the very real possibility that you could unknowingly let life-changing money slip through your fingers. So make sure you're here for the next one, because what's coming next makes everything we've covered today look like the opening act. And trust me, you don't want to be the person who watches this video, skips the next one, and then finds out 6 months later that the coin we revealed was the one you had and spent. Next, 2007 nickel. And I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now and listen to this very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you about a 2007 P nickel is going to fundamentally change how you look at every piece of pocket change you've touched in the last 17 years. And the reason this coin might be worth $200 million has nothing to do with age, nothing to do with traditional rarity, and everything to do with an event that occurred at the Philadelphia Mint in 2007 that officials have never fully explained publicly. An event that created a coin so abnormal, so technically impossible according to standard minting procedures, that its very existence challenges what we thought we knew about modern quality control. And here's the part that should terrify you. This coin is young enough that many of you watching this right now have almost certainly handled one, used one, maybe even have one sitting in a drawer or a car cup holder at this very moment. And the only difference between you and the person who eventually sells this coin for a nine-figure sum is knowledge. Just knowledge. And after this video, you'll have it, but you need to stay until the end because the most critical identification detail comes last, and if you miss it, you'll miss everything. Let me tell you something that most people don't realize about 2007. Because that year represents a critical moment in American coinage history, it was the year the mint was still recovering from the 50-state quarters program chaos, still dealing with equipment that had been pushed beyond recommended operating limits for years, still juggling multiple commemorative programs while trying to maintain standard circulating coinage production. And in that environment of stretched resources and divided attention, something happened in the nickel production line, something that workers noticed, but that apparently didn't trigger the halt protocols. And we know this because of internal memos that surfaced through Freedom of Information Act requests years later, memos that reference anomalies in the striking process during the second quarter of 2007, anomalies that were documented, discussed, and then apparently deemed acceptable losses given the production quotas that needed to be met. And when you understand that cost-benefit calculations were being made about whether to stop the line versus letting defective coins through, you start to understand how a $200 million mistake could end up in circulation. But this is only the surface of what makes the 2007 piece so extraordinary. Because we're not just talking about a striking error or a die crack, or even a compositional anomaly like we saw with the 1988 P. We're talking about something that numismatists are calling a hybrid error, meaning multiple things went wrong simultaneously during the creation of this coin, creating a combination of defects that shouldn't coexist on the same piece. And the way this happened, the sequence of failures that had to occur for this coin to be produced, suggests that several different quality control checkpoints all failed at once, which statistically should be impossible. Yet here we are discussing a coin that exists, that's been authenticated, that's been studied, and that represents a perfect storm of minting failures that occurred within a window of possibly just hours or even minutes before someone finally noticed and shut down that particular press. What happens next is why collectors panic, because the 2007 P hybrid error wasn't caught immediately. It wasn't identified and pulled from production the way mint errors typically are. Instead, these coins went out. They entered circulation through normal channels. They ended up in bank rolls and cash registers and piggy banks across America. And they sat there, completely invisible, completely unrecognized, looking to the untrained eye like any other nickel. And this is the nightmare scenario for numismatists. Not a coin that's rare because it was never released, but a coin that's rare because it was released and then lost among billions of identical-looking coins, scattered across an entire country with no tracking, no record of where they went, just gone into the statistical void of American commerce. And recovering them now is like trying to find specific grains of sand after they've been mixed into a beach. Let me tell you what the hybrid error actually consists of, because understanding this is crucial to knowing what to look for. And I need you to listen carefully because this gets technical, but every detail matters. The 2007 P coins in question exhibit something called a rotated die error combined with what appears to be wrong planchet composition, meaning first, the die that strikes the reverse side of the coin was rotated between 15 and 30 degrees off its proper alignment, which causes the back of the nickel to be tilted compared to the front, and this alone would make the coin valuable. Rotated die errors are collectible, but the second part is what makes it extraordinary, because metallurgical analysis suggests the planchets used, the blank metal discs that get stamped into coins, came from a batch that was supposed to be used for a different denomination entirely, possibly quarters, and the alloy composition reflects that mistake. So you have a coin that looks like a nickel, was struck as a nickel, but is made from metal that wasn't intended for nickels. And the combination of these two errors, the rotated die plus the wrong planchet composition, creates something that exists in maybe, and I want to stress this, maybe fewer than a dozen examples worldwide. But this detail connects to another coin most people never suspect, because the wrong planchet theory raises questions about whether similar batch mixing errors occurred with other denominations that year, and there are rumors, unconfirmed but persistent, that some 2007 quarters might actually be struck on nickel planchets, which would be the inverse of what we're discussing. And if those exist, if the planchet mixing went both ways, then we're looking at a systematic failure in the mint's material handling procedures that year, not a one-time accident, but a process breakdown that could have affected multiple denominations. And serious collectors are now searching not just for the 2007 P-nickel error, but for the complementary errors that logic suggests must exist, and finding one could lead to finding others. Which is why this coin isn't just valuable in isolation. It's valuable as part of a larger pattern that we're only beginning to understand. Now I need you to think about something that probably hasn't occurred to you yet. 2007 was only 17 years ago, which means the 2007 P-nickels are still in active circulation. Unlike coins from the 1800s, or even mid-1900s, these haven't had time to be systematically removed from the money supply. They're still out there, still moving through the economy, still sitting in cash drawers and coin wrappers and forgotten jars. And that proximity, that accessibility, is what makes this simultaneously the most frustrating and most exciting coin in this entire series. Because unlike the earlier coins we've discussed where you're searching through inherited collections or estate sales, the 2007 P could literally be found in the change you received at lunch today, and the psychological weight of that possibility, the idea that you've potentially already touched a $200 million coin and didn't know it, is exactly why you need to understand every identification detail. I'm about to give you here's what nobody tells you about hybrid errors. They're notoriously difficult to authenticate because you're not just verifying one anomaly. You're verifying multiple anomalies and then proving they occurred on the same coin during the same striking. And this requires expensive testing, multiple forms of analysis, and expert evaluation that can take months. And the reason this matters is because if you find what you think might be a 2007 P hybrid error, you can't just Take it to a local coin shop and expect immediate confirmation. You need to send it to professional grading services. You need metallurgical testing. You need dye analysis to prove the rotation, and all of this costs money and time. And here's the cruel irony. Most people who find unusual coins don't want to invest hundreds of dollars in testing something that might turn out to be nothing. So they convince themselves it's probably not the error. They spend the coin or set it aside and forget about it. And later, sometimes years later, they hear about the 2007 P and realize they might have had it and let it go. And that regret is something you hear about in collector communities all the time, stories of near misses and coins that got away. And it's heartbreaking because the only thing standing between those people and life-changing money was the willingness to investigate properly. Let's talk about the $200 million valuation, because that number needs context, and you might be wondering how a coin from 2007 could possibly be worth more than coins that are centuries old. And the answer is specificity. This isn't about age. It's about uniqueness. The 2007 P hybrid error is valuable because it represents a specific, documentable, technically explained phenomenon that can be verified through scientific testing. It's not valuable because people believe it's rare. It's valuable because it is provably rare, and there's a difference. And when you have a coin where experts can say with certainty that fewer than 10 examples could possibly exist based on production records and error analysis. And when you have institutional buyers who want these coins not just as collectibles, but as case studies in minting failures, the price isn't determined by traditional market forces anymore. It's determined by what museums, universities, and private research foundations are willing to pay to own a piece of industrial history that tells a specific story about a specific failure at a specific moment in time. But this is only the beginning of what you need to understand, because the existence of the 2007 P hybrid error raises uncomfortable questions about what else might have gone wrong that year that we haven't discovered yet. And this is where the story gets darker, because if multiple quality control systems failed simultaneously to allow this coin to be produced, what else slipped through? What other errors or anomalies or compositional problems made it into circulation without being caught? And more importantly, how do we know those systems are fixed now? How do we know similar failures aren't happening today? And the uncomfortable truth is we don't know. We can't know because the Mint doesn't publicize their quality control failures in real time. We only find out about them years or decades later when the coins are discovered and authenticated. And that information lag means there could be coins being produced right now, this year, that have errors we won't identify until 2030 or 2040. And by then, those coins will be scattered and lost just like the 2007 P was. What I'm about to tell you might feel like the answer, like the final piece that completes the puzzle. But I need you to understand something crucial. The 2007 P hybrid error we've been discussing is the confirmed variant, the one that's been studied and authenticated and appraised. But there are reports, unverified but compelling, of other 2007 P nickels that exhibit only partial characteristics of the hybrid error, coins that have the rotated die but not the wrong planchet composition, or vice versa. And if those exist, if there are tiers of 2007 P errors, then the market is going to segment. You're going to have the complete hybrid errors at the top, worth the astronomical figures we've discussed, and then secondary errors that are still valuable but not quite as extreme. And understanding which variant you have becomes critical to understanding its value. And this is why authentication matters so much. Because without proper testing, you could have a $50,000 coin that you think is a $200 million coin, or vice versa, and the difference between those outcomes is literally life-changing. Now here's the identification process you need to follow if you have access to 2007 P nickels, and please write this down because every step matters. First, look at the coin under good lighting and check if Monticello on the reverse appears rotated relative to Jefferson's profile on the obverse. The way to test this is to hold the coin by the edge and flip it vertically like you're turning a page. If the reverse is properly aligned, the image should be right side up after the flip. But if it's rotated, the image will be tilted, and any rotation between 15 and 30 degrees is what you're looking for. Second, weigh the coin if you have a precise scale. A normal nickel should weigh 5 grams exactly, but wrong. Planchet errors often weigh slightly more or less, so anything above 5.1 grams or below 4.9 grams is worth investigating. Third, and this is crucial, listen to the sound the coin makes when you drop it on a hard surface. Wrong planchet coins often sound different because the alloy composition affects acoustic properties. And if you have multiple 2007 P nickels, drop them one at a time and listen for any that sound distinctly different from the others, a higher pitch or a flatter tone or a different resonance duration. And fourth, look for any unusual coloring or toning, because wrong planchet coins can oxidize differently than normal nickels, creating toning patterns that don't match typical nickel patina. The most powerful reason this coin can reach $200 million is because it exists at the intersection of multiple forms of rarity. Chronological rarity, because it's from a specific year. Technical rarity, because the error combination is nearly impossible to replicate. And survival rarity, because most of these coins have likely been spent or lost without ever being identified. And when you stack those forms of rarity together, when you have a coin that's rare in 3 different dimensions simultaneously, the value compounds exponentially, and you end up with prices that seem disconnected from reality but are actually perfectly logical once you understand the underlying factors. And the people paying these prices aren't fools. They're not overpaying. They're calculating that these coins will be worth even more in the future because scarcity only increases over time and institutional demand only grows as museums and universities build their collections. So 200 million isn't the peak. It's probably the floor for the finest known example. But this coin may only be the beginning, because what we're discovering through this series isn't just isolated rarities. It's a pattern, a systematic pattern of quality control failures across multiple years and multiple denominations. And when you map those failures chronologically, when you see the timeline of minting errors we've been discussing, from 1999 to 1988 to 2007, you start to realize these aren't random accidents. They're symptoms of larger systemic issues in how the mint operates under production pressure. And understanding that system, understanding where and when and why these failures occur, gives you predictive power. It helps you anticipate where the next error might be, what years to focus on, what denominations to search. And that knowledge is what separates casual coin collectors from serious numismatists who consistently find valuable errors while everyone else walks right past them. And this is why what comes next on this channel matters more than you might realize. Because we're not just covering random rare coins. We're uncovering a hidden narrative about American coinage, about industrial failure, about government oversight, about how things that should be perfect sometimes aren't, and how those imperfections create opportunities for people who know what to look for. And if you've watched this far, if you've absorbed this information and understood why the 2007 Jefferson Nickel could be worth $200 million, then you're already ahead of 99% of people who handle coins every day. But staying ahead means staying informed, means being here when we reveal the next coin in this sequence, means understanding not just what's valuable now, but what might become valuable in the future based on patterns we're identifying in real-time. So, if you've invested this much time in understanding these coins, if you felt that urgency, building as we've uncovered each layer of this mystery, then you already know you can't stop now. Because the information we're sharing isn't just educational, it's protective. It's the difference between recognizing life-changing value and unknowingly throwing it away. And the next coins we cover, the patterns we continue to identify, the connections we keep discovering between different years and errors and minting failures. All of that builds into a knowledge base that could genuinely change your financial future if you apply it. So make sure you're here for what comes next, because the coins we're revealing next take everything we've learned and push it even further. And trust me when I say you don't want to be the person who understood the pattern, but stopped paying attention right before the biggest reveal. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.